what's going on? I am Gregg Sussman, joined today by Jim Sonis of FanDuel, who is here to break down this week's Rocket Mortgage. What's going on, Jim?
It is all good, Greg. I'm pretty excited for this weekend because it's a deviation from what we've had. It's been strong field after strong field the past couple of weeks, and now it's a little bit interesting, which can lead to some differentiations in roster construction and decisions to be made for daily fantasy. So interesting, a game theory slate here for sure. So I'm pretty excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I watched a lot of last week's tournament. Dustin Johnson having one hell of a Saturday and finishing it off with Sunday to cap off the victory. It was a good tournament. It was a fun tournament. But as you said, this week's a little bit different. Yet we're going to go exactly where we started last week with Bryson DeChambeau. As with somebody that we kept feeling he's going to get over the hump. He's going to get over the hump. He's going to win this thing. But he's constantly been in the mix. He's helped us out in our lineups. And we don't expect this weekend to be any different.
Yeah, when you look at this field, Greg, there are kind of two golfers who stand and look like they are a tier above the entire field. Those guys are Bryson DeChambeau and Webb Simpson. I think to me, the decision is, do you want to go one? Do you want to go the other? Or do you want to go both? Personally, I'm probably going to go both as often as I can, but I think if I had to choose between the two, I would go with Bryson DeChambeau number one, because I don't think the gap in salary between him and the field is high enough. It is like $10,000 or it is $1,000, but it potentially could be even higher. Dating back even before the COVID-19 layout, before we got Swole Bryson out there, DeChambeau, 6 straight finishes of eighth or better. He has gained at least 2.8 strokes off the tee in all 6 of those events, gained at least 2.3 on approach in 5 of those 6. So just stupid ball striking out of Bryson DeChambeau in this time. And the putter has been hot too, which could hint at some regression coming, but Bryson also ranks 9th in putting on POA and bentgrass over the past 100 rounds, according to Fantasy National. So we can expect the good putting to continue, even if he may not be as good as he has been recently. For cash games, I'm going to start things off here with DeChambeau and kind of build from there. And for tournaments, I know Bryson will be popular, but I want to try to be overweight on him relative to the field. And again, pairing him with Webb Simpson pretty often, just because I think that they are kind of a tier above the rest. So to me, Bryson's number one, but I want to get him in there with Webb as often as I can.
We know how hot Bryson has been. We know about that strength off the tee and the putter. Well, it's been good enough as well. Clearly ahead of the field along with Webb Simpson. Bryson's the guy, but you probably want to go with both guys, which means Webb and Bryson should both be in your lineup. But if you got to choose one, Jim's going with Bryson DeChambeau. The next higher-priced golfer that Jim wanted to bring up today isn't Webb Simpson, but again, he's in that other tier with Bryson. It's Viktor Hovland, who's priced at $10,900 this week on FanDuel. Viktor Hovland, he's been a bit inconsistent. Why do you like him this week at the Rocket Mortgage?
Yeah, I think he's just good relative to the field. I think that's always encouraging. And this tier is pretty good, too. It's not as good. It's not on the same level as DeChambeau and Simpson. But you have options here. Patrick Reed, Tyrrell Hatton, Sungjae Im. I like all those guys. But I think that Hovland is interesting because the ball striking is just so good. Hovland has gained at least 3.5 strokes in approach in each event since the end of the COVID-19 layoff. And he has gained at least 1.5 off the tee in all 3 of those events as well. When you do stuff like that, you gain so many strokes off the tee and on your approach game, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to not be as good around the green and on the green, which is definitely where Hovland does struggle. Hovland, 6th in the field in good drives gained over the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National. He is 2nd in approach, and he did finish 13th here last year. So he does have course knowledge, and they've only been here once. Not a lot of guys have that in this field. So it's a weakened field. I am good buying into someone with elite ball striking. Hovland is that at $10,900, but I'm also intrigued by Sungjae Im at $10,800, getting into him after a couple of down events. So I think that of this good group, I'd rank Hovland and Sungjae Im the highest, but both very worth the inclusions if you decide to go with a more balanced approach.
Again, that ball striking term comes up here with Viktor Hovland, which gives us some ability at least around the green for Viktor Hovland to struggle, which we've seen happen. Sungjae Im, as you mentioned, he hasn't been great over the past few events. But when you look at the type of players that are playing and participating here this weekend, it's not what we have seen over the past couple of weeks, which makes Viktor Hovland and Sungjae Im, Patty Reed too, fine options here in this price range. And now we get to the middle tier, and that's funny because I believe we talked about Lucas Glover last week, but he might have been in the cheaper tier last week. But Lucas Glover, because of that field, He jumps up in price this week. He's priced at $9,800. How come you're going back to Lucas Glover here despite the increase in price tag?
Yeah, I think to me it's because the increased salary for Lucas Glover is justified because he added another event with really good ball striking. We talked about last week why we wanted to buy into Lucas Glover was because his approach numbers have been really good since the end of the COVID-19 layoff. He actually got even better last week at the Travelers. He gained 7.3 strokes on approach in that event alone. That is the most for Lucas Glover in a single event since 2017, which means he's going to come back to earth. You don't expect an outlier performance 2 weeks in a row, but he is 32nd in good drives gained over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. He is in the top 30 in approach as well, and he's not going to be a good putter anywhere, but he's at least less bad on POA and bent grass than he is on Bermuda. So it should be a good week or better week than usual for Lucas Glover from a putting perspective. He is $9,800. Another good two here. Guys like Adam Hadwin are around here. Doc Redman is $10,000. I think you could buy into those guys. Rory Sabatini as well. But if I had to pick just one golfer from this tier, it would be Lucas Glover. Again, I want to buy into guys who have skills they can duplicate on a week-by-week basis. That means looking into good ball strikers. Lucas Glover has always been that, but he's especially been that the past three events, and I would not be shocked if that continues once again this weekend at $9,800.
It's all about being able to replicate that form, and what Lucas Glover does well is ball striking. He has been able to do it over and over again. He gave out the stats via Fantasy National, and if the putter is good enough, we talked a lot about that last week, well, Lucas Glover will pay dividends even in this increased price tag at $9,800. He's earned it, so Jim's willing to pay it. Up next in the middle tier, another one, a guy that we talk about a lot. It's Harold Varner III. He's $9,300. Again, a guy that I'm much used to paying a lot less money for, but here this week in this field at $9,300, you're paying up for a guy that you know and the guy you can rely on, and hopefully a guy that can replicate what he does well also.
We've talked a lot about different tiers that I like for this week, Greg. This is not one of them. Basically, it's just Harold Varner in this tier who I think is intriguing. There's essentially no one between $9,600 and about $8,700 who I think is super intriguing outside of Harold Varner III at $9,300. He is kind of this unicorn in this tier who really does stand out. He's another guy who's been really good with his approach play the past three events. In two of those events, Varner has gained at least 5.7 strokes in approach. He did miss a cut in the other one, but even that one, where he played just 2 rounds, he gained 0.8 strokes in approach there. So he's been good on the second and third shots the entire time since the end of this layoff. Those outings have pushed Varner up to 6th in the field in approach over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National, and he's also 16th in good drives gained. So again, ball striking matters, and Varner has been very good in those various categories. Like Glover, Varner better on POA and bent grass than he is on Bermuda, so I think that he might be competent as a putter this weekend, and if he does that and continues to just do what he's been doing on his second and third shots, I think he'll pay off pretty easily at $9,300. Varner has looked really, really good recently. $9,300, not as big of a salary increase as you might expect, and I'm very willing to pay that in a tier that's really devoid of a lot of golfers who jump off the page to me.
Not exactly a tier that you want to live in, according to Jim. The one unicorn in this section is Harold Varner III, whose approach has just been so good throughout this season, especially after that COVID-19 layoff, as Jim mentioned. Harold Varner III, a guy you have to get in there just based on the price tag. Now let's go under $9,000, and let's talk about some golfers that, well, if it wasn't for this kind of field, we probably wouldn't go with. And we start with Sebastian Munoz at $8,600. Why is Munoz on the radar here?
It is not because of his finishes recently, Greg, because Munoz has missed 2 of the past 3 cuts since the end of the COVID-19 layoff, so things not necessarily going swimmingly there. But it does look like Munoz has the components of putting together a really good event this weekend. Namely, Munoz's approach is still a plus. Even in the 2 events where he missed the cut, he still gained strokes on his approach. He's up to 23rd in the field in approach over the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National. The short game, not a strong suit, but he hasn't been as bad there as he has been. He hasn't been as bad over the larger sample as he has been since the end of the COVID-19 layoff. So I'm expecting him to be better there than he has been recently, which should lead to a made cut, you would assume, for this weekend. Munoz, 83rd over the past 50 rounds around the green. He is 47th in putting on bent grass and POA over the past 50 rounds. So not a plus, but not as big of a negative, not a glaring hole like we see with some other guys in this field. Munoz, $8,600. He missed the cut here last year. That obviously is not a good thing, but it does mean that he has experience at this course, and I will certainly take that, given that most people have not played here before. So I think that Munoz, definitely, like you said, maybe not someone we go to in a bigger field, but he's $8,600. He has good ball striking. I think that that's enough for me to buy in at $8,600 for Sebastian Munoz.
This is what Jim is doing. He's just grasping at straws at this point with Sebastian Munoz. He's missed 2 of his last 3 cuts, missed the cut last year, but hey, at least he played this course, right? This is what we're looking at. A guy that has not played well as of late, have a little experience, and when you need somebody cheap, under $9,000 with a group of golfers that is not exactly star-studded, you do what you can. Sebastian Munoz is what we can do. One last golfer that's even cheaper than Munoz is Chesson Hadley at $8,300. I heard the explanation of Munoz. I'm really excited about this one too, Jim.
Yeah, for Chesson Hadley, if you're looking for a winner, probably not going to be him. He's 170 to 1 to win at FanDuel Sportsbook. Usually we're sticking with guys who are like 100 to win or shorter. That ain't Chesson Hadley. But Chesson Hadley, I think that, again, we're looking for good ball strikers in a tier where you're not going to find a whole lot of those, and Hadley does do that pretty well. He ranks 12th in good drives gained over the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National, 15th in approach. 12th and 15th in those numbers, that's going to lead to a lot of birdie opportunities for Chesson Hadley. That's kind of all you could ask for in this salary range. Hadley played 2 events in June. He's gained a combined 6.7 strokes in approach in those 2 events. He has gained 3.6 off the tee in those events. He's just lost almost all those strokes around the green. So basically what you're hoping is that Chesson Hadley doesn't dunk it, wherever it may be once he gets around the green. You're hoping he sticks it on approach because it's probably not going to go well if he is around the green. But when the ball striking is that good, like we said with Victor Hovland, you're giving yourself some leeway in the other departments. That's what I want out of Chesson Hadley. So I'm willing to roll the dice on his around the tee play, around the green play, and see what happens. $8,300, pretty good salary for a guy who grades out so well off the tee and with his approach, and we'll kind of see what happens after those first and second shots.
Our goal on those first and second shots, get on the green. Make our lives easier. Please, Chesson Hadley, make it worth our while. He's not going to be something that's going to win, but he can just make the cut and hang around and, not screw up too badly. It'll help our FanDuel lineups, even if we're not going to bet on them over the FanDuel Sportsbook. Jim, we appreciate the time. Good luck this weekend.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes, Greg. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens, but should be a fun one regardless, and a lot of interesting names to consider despite the weekend field.
All about the ball striking ability this week at the Rocket Mortgage. You heard it here repeatedly. Ball striking, ball striking, ball striking. A little putting as well. For Jim Sanas, I am Gregg Sussman. We'll be back tomorrow with Tom Vecchio talking about the NFL right here on the FanDuel Hurry Up.